Welcome back, everyone, to a Memory of Light read-through by your one and only host, Calculator Ferret. Now, let's just get started right into this, because I imagine you guys do not want to listen to me ramble. If you want to listen to me ramble, check out my other channel. Moghedien stepped onto a platform of stone floating in the middle of an open sea. Glassy and blue, the water rippled in the occasional breeze, but there were no waves. Neither was there any land in sight. Moghedien stood at the side of the platform, hands clasped behind his back. In front of him, the sea burned. The fire gave off no smoke, but it was hot, and the water near it hissed and boiled. Stone flooring in the middle of an endless sea. Water that burned. Moghedien always had enjoyed creating impossibilities in his dream shards. "Sit," Moghedien said to her, not turning. She obeyed, choosing one of the 4 chairs suddenly arranged near the center of the platform. The sky was deep blue, cloudless, and the sun hung at about 3/4 of the way to its zenith. How long had it been since she'd seen the sun in Telrangerhood? Lately, the omnipresent black storm had blanketed the sky. But then, this wasn't completely Telrangerhood, nor was it Moghedien's dream, but a melding of the two, like a temporary lean-to built off the side of the dream world, a bubble of merged realities. Moghedien wore a gown of black and gold, lace work on the sleeves faintly reminiscent of a spider's web. Only faintly. One did well not to overuse a theme. As she sat, Moghedien tried to exude control and self-confidence. Once, both had come easy for her. Today, trying to capture either was like trying to snatch dandelion seeds in the air, only have them dance away from her hand. Moghedien gritted her teeth, angry at herself. She was one of the chosen. She had made kings weep, armies tremble. Her names had been used by generations of mothers to frighten their children. And now... She felt it at her neck, found the pendant hanging there. It was still safe. She knew it was, but touching it brought her calmness. "Do not grow too comfortable wearing that," Moghedien said. A wind blew across her, rippling the pristine ocean surface. On that wind she heard faint screams. "You are not completely forgiven, Moghedien. This is a probation. Perhaps when you fail next, I'll give the mind trap to Damodred." She sniffed. He would toss it aside in boredom. Damodred wanted only one thing, all Althor. Anyone who does not lead him towards his goal is unimportant to him. "You underestimate him," Moghedien said greatly. "The great lord is pleased at Damodred. Very pleased. You, however..." Moghedien sank down in her chair, feeling her tortures anew. Pain such as few in this world had ever known. Pain beyond what a body should be able to endure. She held to the Korsuvra and embraced Sayadar. That brought some relief. Before, channeling in the same room as the Korsuvra had been agonizing. Now that she, rather than Moghedien, wore the pendant, it was not so. Not just a pendant, she thought, clutching it. My soul itself. Darkness within. She had never thought that she, of all people, would find herself subject to one of these. Was she not the spider, careful in all that she did? She reached her other hand up, clasping it over the one that held the pendant. What if she fell? What if someone took it? She wouldn't lose it. She couldn't lose it. This is what I have become? She felt sick. I have to recover, somehow. She forced herself to let go of the mind trap. The last battle was upon them. Already Trollocs poured into the southern lands. It was a new war of the shadow, but only she and the other chosen knew the deeper secrets of the one power. The one she hadn't been forced to give up to those horrible women. No, don't think about that. The pain, the suffering, failure. In this war, they faced no 100 companions, no Aes Sedai of centuries of skill and practice. She would prove herself, and past errors would be forgiven. Moghedien continued to stare at those impossible flames. The only sounds were that of the fire and that of the water that boiled near it. He would eventually explain his purpose in summoning her, wouldn't he? He had been acting increasingly strange lately. Perhaps his madness was returning. Once, the man named Moghedien, or Ishmael, or Elaine Maureen Tedrani, would have delighted in holding a Korsava for one of his rivals. He would have invented punishments, thrilled in her agony. There had been some of that at the start, then he had lost interest. He spent more and more time alone, staring into flames, brooding. The punishments he had administered to her and Sayadine had seemed almost routine. She found him more dangerous this way. A gateway split the air just to the side of the platform. Do we really need to do this every other day, Moghedien? Demodred asked, stepping through and into the world of dreams. Handsome and tall, he had jet hair and a prominent nose. He gave Moghedien a glance, noting the mind trap in her neck before continuing. I have important things to do, and you interrupt them. There are people you need to meet, Demodred, Moghedien said softly. Unless the Great Lord has named you nobilis without informing me, you will do as you are told. Your playthings can wait. Demodred's expression darkened, but he did not object further. He let the gateway close, then moved to the side, looking down to the sea. He frowned. What was in the waters? She hadn't looked. She felt foolish for not doing so. What had happened to her caution? Demodred walked to one of the chairs near her, but did not sit. He stood, contemplating Moghedien from behind. What had Demodred been doing? During her period bound to the mind trap, she had done Moghedien's bidding, but had never found an answer to Demodred. She shivered again, thinking of those months under Moghedien's control. I will have vengeance. You've let Moghedien free, Demodred said. What of this Sayadine? She is not your concern, Moghedien said. Moghedien had not failed to notice that Moghedien still wore Sayadine's mind trap. Sayadine. It meant last chance in the old tongue, but the woman's true nature was one secret that Moghedien had discovered. Moghedien himself had rescued Lanfear from Sinhole, freeing her from the creatures that feasted upon her ability to channel. In order to rescue her, and of course to punish her, Moghedien had slain her. That had allowed the Great Lord to recapture her soul and place it in a new body. Brutal, but very effective. Precisely the kind of solution the Great Lord preferred. Moghedien was focused on his flames, and Demodred on him, so Moghedien used the chance to slip out of her seat and walk to the edge of the floating stone platform. The water below was completely clear. Through it she could see people very distantly, or very distinctly, rather. They floated with their legs chained to something deep below, arms bound behind them. They swayed like kelp. There were thousands of them. Each of them looked up at the sky with wide, horrified eyes. They were locked in a perpetual state of drowning, not dead, not allowed to die, but constantly gasping for air and finding only water. As she watched, something dark reached up from below and pulled one of them down to the depths. Blood rose like a blooming flower. It caused the others to struggle all the more urgently. Moghedien smiled. It did her good to see someone other than herself suffering. These might simply be figments, but it was possible that they were ones who had failed the Great Lord. Another gateway opened at the side of the platform, and an unfamiliar woman stepped through. The creature had alarmingly unpleasant features, with a hooked yet bulbous nose and pale eyes that were off-center with one another. She wore a dress that tried to be fine, of yellow silk, but it only served to highlight the woman's ugliness. Moghedien sneered and returned to her seat. Why was Moghedien admitting a stranger to one of their meetings? This woman could channel. She must be one of those useless women who call themselves Aes Sedai in this age. Granted, Moghedien thought, sitting, she is powerful. How had Moghedien missed noticing one of this talent among the Aes Sedai? Her sources had picked out that wretched light-skirt Nineveh almost immediately, yet they'd missed this hag? This is who you wish us to meet? Demodred said, lipstick turning down. No, Moghedien said absently. You've met Hesselem before. Hesselem? It meant without forgiveness in the old tongue. The woman met Moghedien's eyes proudly, and there was something familiar about her stance. I have things to be about, Moghedien, the newcomer said. This had better be... Moghedien gasped. That tone and that voice. Do not take that tone with me, Moghedien cut in, speaking softly, not turning. Do not take it of any of us. Currently, even Moghedien is favored more than you. Grandiel? Moghedien asked, horrified. Do not use that name, Moghedien said, spitting on her, the burning waters flaring up. It has been stripped from her. Grandiel, Hesselem, sat down without looking again at Moghedien. Yes, the way the woman carried herself was right. It was her. Moghedien almost chortled with glee. Grandiel had always used her looks as a bludgeon. Well, now they were a bludgeon of a different type. How perfect! The woman must be positively writhing inside. What had she done to earn such a punishment? Grandiel's stature, her authority, the myths told about her, were all linked to her beauty. What now? Would she have to start searching for the most horrid people alive to keep as pets, the only ones who could compete with her ugliness? This time Moghedien did laugh. A quiet laugh, but Grandiel heard. The woman shot her a glare that could have set a section of the ocean aflame all of its own. Moghedien returned a calm gaze, feeling more confident now. She resisted the urge to stroke the Corsiva. Bring what you will, Grandiel, she thought. We are on level footing now. We shall see who ends this race ahead. A stronger wind blew past, and ripples started to rise around them, though the platform itself remained secure. Moghedien let his fire die out, and nearby waves rose. Moghedien could make out bodies, little more than dark shadows, inside those waves. Some were dead. Others struggled for the surface, their chains removed, but as they neared the open air, something always towed them back down again. We are few now, Moghedien said. We four, and the one who is punished most, are all that remain. By definition, that makes us the strongest. Some of us are, Moghedien thought. One of us was slain by Althor, Moghedien, and required the great lord's hand to return him. Why had Moghedien never been punished for his failure? Well, it was best not to look too long for fairness in the great lord's hand. Still, we are too few. Moghedien waved a hand, and a stone doorway appeared in the side of the platform. Not a gateway, just a door. Not a gateway, just a door. This was Moghedien's dream shard. He could control it. The door opened, and a man strode through it, and out onto the platform. Dark-haired, the man had the features of a Chaldean, a nose that was faintly hooked, eyes that tilted. He was handsome and tall, and Moghedien recognized him. The leader of those fledgling male Aes Sedai? I know this man, Mazrib. That name has been discarded, Moghedien said, just as each of us, upon being chosen, discarded what we were and the names men called us. From this moment on, this man shall be known only as Mahail, one of the chosen. Chosen? Hesselem seemed to choke on the word. This child, he's... She cut off. It was not their place to debate if one was chosen. They could argue among themselves, even plot if they did so with care. But questioning the great lord, that was not allowed. Ever. Hesselem said no more. Moghedien would not dare call this man chosen if the great lord had not decided it. There were no arguments to be made. Still, Moghedien shivered. Tame, Mahail, was said to be strong, perhaps as strong as the rest of them. By elevating one from this age, with all their ignorance, it galled her to consider that this Mahail will be regarded as her equal. I see the challenge in your eyes, Moghedien said, looking at the three of them, though only one of you is foolish enough to start voicing it. Mihail has earned his reward. Too many of our numbers threw themselves into contest with Althor when he was presumed to be weak. Mihail instead earned Lews trust, then took charge of the training of his weapons. He has been raising a new generation of dreadlords to the Shadow's cause. What do the three of you have to show for your work since being released? You will know the fruits I have harvested, Moghedien, Demodred said, voice low. You will know them in bushels and droves. Just remember my requirement. I face Althor in the field of battle. His blood is mine, and no one else's. He met each of their eyes in turn, then finally those of Mihail. There seemed to be a familiarity to them. The two had met before. You will have competition with that one, Demodred, Moghedien thought. He wants Althor nearly as much as you do. Demodred had been changing lately. Once, he wouldn't have cared who killed Lews, as long as the man died. What made Demodred insist on doing the deed himself? Moghedien, Moghedien said. Demodred has plans for the war to come. You are to assist him. Assist him, she said. Do not forget yourself so quickly, Moghedien. Moghedien's voice was silky. You will do as you are told. Demodred wants you watching over one of the armories that now lacks proper monitoring. Speak a single word of complaint, and you will realize that the pain you have known up until now is but a shadow of true agony. Her hand went to the corsera at her throat. Looking into his eyes, she felt her authority evaporate. I hate you, she thought. I hate you more for doing this to me in front of the others. The last days are upon us, Moghedien said, turning his back on them. In these hours you will earn your final rewards. If you have grudges, put them behind you. If you have plots, bring them to completion. Make your final plays, for this is the end. Talmanes lay on his back, staring up at a dark sky. The clouds above seemed to be reflecting light from below, the light of a dying city. That was wrong. Light came from above, didn't it? He'd fallen from the horse not long after starting for the city gate. He could remember that, most of the time. Pain made it hard to think. People yelled at one another. I should have taunted Matt more, he thought, a hint of a smile cracking his lips. Stupid thing to be thinking of at such a time. I have to find the dragons. Or did we find them already? I'm telling you, the bloody things don't work like that, Dendel's voice. They're not bloody Aes Sedai on wheels. We can't make a wall of fire. We can send those balls of metal hurtling to the Trollocs. They explode, Gaibon's voice. We could use the extras like I say. Talmanes' eyes drifted closed. The balls explode, yes, Daniel said, but we have to launch them first. Setting them all in a row and letting the Trollocs run over them won't do much. A hand shook Talmanes' shoulder. Lord Talmanes, Melton said, there is no dishonor in letting it end now. I know the pain is great. May the last embrace of the mother shelter you. A sword being drawn. Talmanes steeled himself. Then he found that he really didn't want to die. He forced his eyes open and held up a hand to Melton, who stood over him. Jessamine hovered nearby, with arms folded, looking worried. Help me to my feet, Talmanes said. Melton hesitated, then did so. You shouldn't be standing, Jessamine said. Better than being beheaded in honor, Talmanes grumbled, gritting his teeth against the pain. Light, was that his hand? It was so dark it looked as if it had been charred in a fire. What is going on? We're cornered, my lord, Melton said, grimly, eyes solemn. He thought them all as good as dead. Denel and Gaibon are arguing the replacement of the dragons for a final stand. Aludra is measuring the charges. Talmanes, finally standing, sagged against Melton. Before him, 2,000 people clustered in the large city square. They huddled like men in the wilderness, seeking one another's warmth on a cold night. Denel and Gaibon had set up the dragons in a half circle, bowed outward, pointing towards the center of the city, refugees behind. The band was now committing to manning the dragons. Pairs of hands were needed to operate each weapon. Almost all the band had had at least some training. The buildings nearby had caught fire, but the light was doing strange things. Why didn't it reach the street? Why didn't it reach the streets? They were all too dark, as if they'd been painted. Like... He blinked, clearing the tears of pain from his eyes, realization dawning. Trollocs filled the streets like ink flowing towards the half circle of dragons that were pointed at them. Something held the Trollocs back for the moment. They're waiting until they are all together for a rush, Talmanes thought. Calls and snarls came from behind. Talmanes pivoted, then clutched Melton's arm as the world lurched. He waited for it to steady. The pain was actually dulling, like glowing flames running out of fresh coal. It had feasted upon him, but there wasn't much left of him for it to eat. As things steadied, Talmanes saw what was creating the snarls. The square they were in adjoined the city walls, but the townspeople and soldiers had kept a distance from the wall, for it was coated with Trollocs, like a thick grime. They raised weapons in the air and roared down at the people. They throw down with spears at anyone who comes too close, Melton said. We've been hoping to reach the walls, then funnel it down to the gate. But we can't, not with those things up there raining death upon us. All other routes are cut off. Aludra approached Gaibon and Denel. Charges! I can sit under the dragons, she said to them, softly, but not as softly as she should have. These charges, they'll destroy the weapons. They may hurt the people in an unpleasant way. Do it, Gaibon said, very softly. What the Trollocs would do is worse, and we cannot allow the dragons to fall into the Shadow's hands. That's why they're waiting. Their leaders are hoping that a sudden rush will give them time to overwhelm us and seize the weapons. They're moving, a soldier called from beside the dragons. Light, they're coming! That dark slime of shadow spawn bubbled down the streets. Teeth, nails, claws, 2 human eyes. The Trollocs came from all sides, eager for the kill. Talmanes struggled to draw breath. On the walls, the calls grew excited. We're surrounded, Talmanes thought. Pressed back against the wall, caught in a net. Pressed back against the wall. Denel! Talmanes shouted over the din. The captain of dragons turned from his line, where men waved with burning punks for the call to launch the one volley they'd have. Talmanes took a deep breath that made his lungs burn. You told me that you could level an enemy bulwark in only a few shots. Of course, Denel called. But we're not trying to enter... He trailed off. Light, Talmanes thought. We're all so exhausted. We should have seen this. You in the middle! Raidens' dragon squad! About face! Talmanes screamed. The rest of you, stay in position and fire at the oncoming Trollocs. Move, move, move! The Dragoneers sprang into motion, Raiden and his men hastily turning their weapons about, wheels creaking. The other dragons began to fire a pattern of shot that sprayed to the street entering the square. The booms were deafening, causing refugees to scream and cover their ears. It sounded like the end of the world. Hundreds, thousands of Trollocs went down in pools of blood as dragons' eggs exploded in their midst. The square filled with white smoke that poured from the mouths of the dragons. The refugees behind, already terrified by what they had just witnessed, shrieked as Raiden's dragons turned on them, and most of them fell to the ground in fright, clearing a path that exposed the Trolloc-infested city walls. Raiden's line of dragons bowed inward like a cup, the reverse formation of those firing into the Trollocs behind, so that the tubes were pointed at the same section of city wall. Give me one of those bloody punks! Talmanes shouted, holding out a hand. One of the dragoners obeyed, passing him a flaming brand of a glowing red tip. He pushed away from Melton, determined to stand his own for that moment. Gaibon stepped up. The man's voice sounded soft to Talmanes' strained ears. Those walls have stood for hundreds of years. My poor city. My poor, poor city. It's not your city any longer, Talmanes said, raising the flaming brand high in the air, defiant before a wall thick of Trollocs, a burning city to his back. It's theirs. Talmanes swiped the brand down the air, leaving a trail of red. His signal ignited a roar of dragonfire that echoed through the square. Trollocs, pieces of them at least, blew into the air. The wall under them exploded like a stack of children's blocks kicked at a full run. As Talmanes wavered, his vision blackening, he saw the wall crumble outward. When he toppled, slipping into unconsciousness, the ground seemed to tremble from the force of his fall.